Says we're live.
I think we're live.
Yes, it seems so.
So, yeah, we're good. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Well, good afternoon for me. Extra good afternoon for Frederick and his time.
Good evening. Yeah.
Good morning for me.
So yeah, we're here to discuss the release of the Golden Harvest version 4. The history of Jeremy and I started beta testing with Frederick in, I think, 2017, 2018 with the version 2 board.
Yeah.
Yep.
Of course, was pre-Smooth Swing. However, the responsive nature of the board was so good right out of the box. We were eager to get in on to see the launch of the version 3, which then added Smooth Swing and NeoPixel. We've been beta testing with Frederick that whole time, amongst other people. But here we are, the launch of the version 4. Frederick, just for those that don't know, little trip back in time. Let everyone know or retell why you chose to call the board Golden Harvest.
That's a very good question, actually. I remember the very moment this name actually came to my mind. Back then, I was working here at the campus of our local university, and I was just about to have lunch at the Mensa there. And I actually looked at some concrete artwork, which is placed in front of that Mensa building, which is supposed to look like a kind of rose garden out of concrete, but you only recognize this if you know this is what it should depict. And then somehow it came to my mind that I could call it like something related to harvest, and then I had the idea with putting golden in front of it, and that was how Golden Harvest was basically born. But I was thinking like for several weeks, if not months, for a proper name before that, actually.
Okay.
And then, of course, one additional point, there, of course, was this nice connection to Blue Harvest, which was this working title, and then everything came nicely together, and that was the trigger that then finally convinced me to go for this option, actually.
Perfect. That's what I was looking for. Into the original trilogy. So, all right, let's not waste any time. Frederick, give us the rundown. Let's go.
So, hello everybody again from me. So I have this little guy with me today. So this is the GHv4. You already see that it's longer than the GHv3, but, and that's very important, it is narrower. So let me also turn this around. So the bottom side, you see here basically the SD card slot. And opposed to it, on the opposite side, there's a big metal box which actually contains the microcontroller. And the reason why there's this big metal housing is actually that it protects the microcontroller from the electromagnetic radiation from this thing over here, which is a PCB antenna, which already gives you the clue what the main new features of this board is, namely wireless connectivity. In particular, we have Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. But more to this later. First, I want to give you like a brief rundown on the essential hardware upgrades. So of course, we learned a lot from the GHv3 development, because basically it was 4 phases in total. We had the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4, building up on the experience from the previous phases. And phase 4 was pretty stable already. The audio amplifier was working very well, but what we wanted to improve, for example, was the computational power of the microcontroller to make it even more robust against electrostatic discharge, which is very important when you like manually solder it, of course. And then what was basically the main bottleneck of the GHv4 towards the end of its evolution is that the available memory space, at least the free memory space that was left, was basically completely gone. So we were not able to put any new features on it. So that was basically the reason why there weren't so frequent firmware updates recently for the GHv3. We have a lot of ideas for new features, but it was just not possible because basically the memory was fully consumed. And now that is one of the main reasons why we chose this new architecture, which runs a so-called ESP32S3, which is basically a microcontroller that runs at 240 megahertz compared to the 80 megahertz of the GHv3 previously. And that's also a very nice addition, that it runs a dual core processor and even has a third co-processor for some tasks. We're also running a real-time operating system on this thing. So basically we have the different features representing different tasks, just like on a normal computer. And this makes everything super smooth and efficient. And yeah, then one of the main points is that now we have a total of 8 megabytes of memory for the features, compared to what we previously had on the GHv3, which was only 256 kilobyte. So we're just an order of magnitude larger. So this means in future we are super safe. We can put a ton of new features on it on a frequent basis, and I'm looking forward to that very much. So yeah, then just a few brief words on the design itself. I mean, one of the unique features or properties of the GHv3 were the huge solar pads, of course. We tried to maintain this as much as possible. So on the GHv4, the soldering pads are still super big, I would say, compared to other boards on the market. Of course, they are a little bit smaller than previously, but still super easy to solder to. And yeah, I think that's at least it for the hardware upgrades for the moment and for the optimized board design.
Right on. Just so that people understand the size of the board for reference, that's my Mark I, installed by Solo Sabers, Jeremy Puckett. So yeah, you can cram that board into a tiny space. He's got kill switch and 1.3 millimeter charge port on the bottom. But Jeremy, go ahead and show your install. And just so everyone knows, we just found out when we were setting up that there's something to do with the how the audio goes over Zoom. Jeremy and I both lit our sabers. You can hear the ignition, but you can't hear swings for like at all. So Frederick's the only one that can demonstrate the sound. Jeremy.
Okay, so when I did my install, I actually didn't even change a chassis. This actual chassis I designed for a Profi board. And it's like probably just a slight, maybe like a micromillimeter bigger on the width than the Profi board, but it fit into this chassis really nicely. One thing I found that when you're doing, for those who are making chassis for these boards, this microcontroller is wide and sticks up. So wherever you are putting your board for a Profi, if you're trying to use a Profi board, you may want to lower your shelf just slightly on it, just so that this thing will actually fit down a little bit more into your chassis, so that it's not being hit by when you're putting your grips on or sliding it in or something like that, just so it slides in nicely. But yeah, the install was really simple and worked really well in this. And this is a 20 what was it, 25 millimeter, no, 28 millimeter chassis. Yeah, this is like Saberforge size chassis that I made. So
before we go back to Frederick, throw him back in front of the camera. I believe, but I know with the GH3, one of the goals was to make the board seamless to integrate into chassis, into the market. So one of the things that he did, as most people know, certainly any GH3 user, is that he made the footprint of the board PCB the same as the Nano Biscotti 4, so that people could seamlessly integrate into like older installs, put new tech in it. And I believe that was sort of the idea behind the design of the GH4 board PCB, was so that you could slide the GH4 into a Profi code, you know. So
yes, exactly. So on paper, it actually has exactly the same width, but of course there can be slight variations because there's always a sort of production tolerance. So this is the micromillimeter Jeremy was talking about probably. So yeah, on paper it's the same width actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just slightly longer because of this antenna.
Yes, exactly. We have like the antenna sticks out 5 mm approximately.
Yeah.
Okay. What's next on our features?
So maybe I would like to briefly show off our wiring diagram creator because we are just talking about the install process, and I could briefly show it. Let me try out to share my screen, which worked nicely, at least when I tested it. So let's see. Can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. So in order to make the install process as easy as possible, and this was also one main reason why we developed this, to make it easy for us here at Sabertech, so that we don't have to create a ton of different of wiring diagrams manually, we actually developed this wiring diagram creator tool, which is accessible via our sabertech.net website. It's just /wiring -diagram -creator. And then you end up on this site here, basically. So this is how it looks when you open it. So we have the Golden Harvest V4 here in the center. Then you have all the main peripherals like the battery, the speaker, the power button, and the main plate. So the minimal configuration, so to speak. And then you can basically just go to these drop-down menus and select your specific custom configuration. Let's say if you would like to have an in-head RGB, the wiring diagram would automatically update itself. So that makes it super easy. But for the moment, let's stick with NeoPixel and just cramp it up with all the other possible features. Let's say we also want to have crossguard. Of course, it displays then the side plates as well. We can change the buttons to 2 buttons. You can also add a few pixel accent LEDs, or let's say like an OLED display here, and our Seedling V2 USB-C charging module, and even a kill switch. So this would be the most complex build you can imagine. But of course, most commonly, it's much more simpler because you don't have these additional peripherals. But yeah, this is basically how this wiring diagram creator tool works. And this is already open access, so we can already go there and play around with it.
The one thing I would ask you to address, Frederick, is
Yes.
I asked you earlier about accent support on the GH4. Can you touch on that just briefly?
Yes, yes. I can do that. So basically, let's first talk about the standard accent LEDs. So basically, we have in total LED pads 1 to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4 are for high power LEDs. So typically 5 to 10 would be for standard accent LEDs, which is 6 in total. Of course, the number of standard accent LEDs is quite limited because you need a dedicated patch for each of them. So the more interesting feature will be how many pixel accent LEDs it will support. And here, basically, I can say that the hardware is practically not limited. So we could theoretically use like as many as pixels in the main plate, for example. But of course, we need to put some artificial limit in order to make it handleable also from the user perspective. And here we are going to set the limit for the moment at least to 32. So there will be additional features being released with future firmware updates, which then make it possible to customize every single pixel ID of these up to 32 in total manually, just by drawing it frame by frame, which animation should be displayed there, for example. So this as a small teaser.
So we can get going
So I
on
think
the
that's it for the install aspect. So I guess we could proceed with the actual features.
Mhm.
So first, I should point out that, of course, we still have all the legacy features of the GHv3 available. So the approach that we took here in designing the GHv4 was basically we take the GHv3 firmware framework, the feature set, and extend based on this framework. So basically, the firmware itself was completely developed from scratch because we have a new microcontroller. But basically, we in the first design process, we ported the GHv3 firmware to this new hardware and then extended on it. So then I would say first we could come to one of the striking features, which will be the wireless connectivity features. And I think we should start with the Bluetooth feature, because this is something that is already in some sense used in the community, not on a huge scale, because so one of the main reasons I think this is the case is that usually you need an extra module for this. And this is now where the GHv4 comes into play, because this little thing does not require any additional modules for the wireless connectivity. So also not for Bluetooth, because everything is managed via this PCB antenna on the GHv4. Basically, for the moment, the main feature for Bluetooth will be the support by the Force Sync app. And I prepared a small demonstration of this. So basically, we can not only remote control the Saber by triggering an ignition, a step, a clash, etc., but it also allows you to change the settings on the fly. So you can change the volume, etc., and actually you can change any general settings that are stored in the general.txt file. So you don't need to access the SD card for this anymore. Let me just take this chassis core here with the GHv4 installed. Now you should hopefully hear the sound. As Clint mentioned earlier, we have some audio issues with Zoom. What I'm going to do now is I'll activate the Bluetooth feature, which I can do on the fly using the Saber editor. So now Bluetooth is running, which is also indicated by a status LED on the board, which is blue. Blue harvest, of course. And so when it's pulsing that fast, it indicates an active Bluetooth connection. And this also happens with the accent LEDs on the board. So basically here you see a switch LED, which is pulsing in the very same pattern. So now I go to my phone, enable Bluetooth there, and then start the Force Sync app. And what I see here, let me switch legs. You already see GHv4 as an option here. So let me just select this. Now it's establishing a connection, and it correctly identified already the GHv4. So I just click on it. So let me try to improve this by doing it like this. Okay, now here you see the start screen of the ForceSync app. So it already interestingly shows you some board stats, like the temperature, the battery voltage, how much charge is left. And it now allows you to select from remote control or parameter changes. So let's just go to the remote control. So I have the chassis here in my hand. And now let's just turn it on via phone. You see the ignition. Can turn on a track. Clash. Swing. And volume control on the fly, of course, very smooth. So let me just turn it off again. And I can here see here the parameter settings. And as I just mentioned earlier, you can actually edit every single settings of the general text file on the SD card. So that's it for the moment for the force sync application. You can disconnect it and disable Bluetooth again by just pressing the power button here.
Bluetooth deactivated.
And then the board restarts and it's in normal operation mode again. So so far for the force sync app. Also, I think I forgot to mention, but you can also change sound fonts, play styles, color profiles, so basically everything. So this is really, really nice to use because it's really a good feeling to be able to control all these things without actually having to see the SD card or touch it. So are there any questions so far at this point, or should we proceed?
I would point out, since we're already in the middle of an announcement, that there's also another project on the go we're keeping quiet. That announcement.
Yes.
Next, I don't know.
So what we will soon see is we have a configuration tool for the Wi-Fi connectivity, which is a kind of web app, which actually allows you to access every single file on the SD card, to change settings, etc. And like perspectively, in future, there will be we will work on it to extend also to Bluetooth and kind of merge it with our Sabertech configurator that we already have for the GHv3, which is a Unity app. So the goal is to merge this with the web app, which we'll discuss in a minute, for the Wi-Fi application. So basically that we have everything in one single software framework.
I wasn't sure if we were going to drop that bomb or not. So anyhow, go ahead.
Oh, I also wasn't sure it was more spontaneous now, but let's see.
It's your turn.
Okay, then we go ahead, and I think this was a nice transition to the Wi-Fi aspect, which comes next, which is actually one of my favorite features because I like the Wi-Fi file transfer feature a lot, because opposed to Bluetooth, this also enables you to upload, for example, sound fonts on your SD card, because Wi-Fi file transfer is sufficiently faster than any Bluetooth connection, of course. Let me just set the board up for Wi-Fi. So the process is pretty much the same as for Bluetooth. So I choose the Wi-Fi option. Actually, there are 3 different Wi-Fi modes. So I can connect to a hotspot, I can create a hotspot, or what I will do now, I can connect to my local home network, because for me, that's usually the easiest option. In this case, I have the SSID and password saved on the general in the general text file.
Connection established.
Now it started and already established the connection, as is indicated by the voice sound. And now, usually, I can easily access our Wi-Fi web app by just entering GHv4.mshome.net or GHv4.local in the browser. I personally cannot do it because I have a super old internet setup here, which does not support yet MDNS, which is a service that is needed to resolve such addresses. But for me, it's easiest to enter just the IP address of the board into the browser. But how do you know the IP address? Well, first, it is saved in the general text file by the board itself, but you don't even need to take the SD card out, because you can just hold the power button and the board will tell you the IP address.
The IP address is 192.168.0.65.
Wow.
I hope you could hear that.
Yeah. Very cool.
That's cool.
And, let me just open it. I need to share it, of course. Now you should be able to see it. Can you confirm? Do you see it?
Yep.
Perfect. So you can see now in my browser that I just typed the IP address here. And this is now the starting page. Perspectively, so in future, the look might change a bit. This is more currently, the plan is to continuously evolve this thing. And then finally, eventually, as just mentioned earlier, to merge it also with our Wi-Fi configurator. So we can enter it by just clicking here on the connect button. And now you see the user interface of our so-called Golden Harvest commander. So what is this thing actually? Well, I like to describe it as a file explorer, like you know it from your computer. And you actually now see in live the content of the SD card that is inserted in my Golden Harvest v4 core. But before we dive deeper into this, let me just briefly mention what you actually see here. So on the upper right corner, you see the network name, the signal strength, then you see the temperature, 38.8 degrees Celsius in this case. Also Fahrenheit, of course, for some of you. Then also battery voltage, 3.94 volt. And this is now the actual file explorer. So you can just use it like any other file explorer that you know from a computer. So this is a folder, apparently. Just click on it, and then you see the content of that folder. You can create a new folder. You can also actually edit files. So for example, we have now here our general text file. Click on that pencil icon, and it will open. And here you can edit anything you want, save it, or don't save it as you wish, and we can close it again. Here you also see now what I told you earlier, that there is basically a file which contains in its name the actual version of the firmware that is installed. So this is called updated to firmware underscore v, and then the actual firmware version. In this case, it's running 0.73 minus 86. Then, speaking of firmware, you can, for example, install a firmware update by just clicking this button, check firmware. Here it again says what is the currently installed firmware version. And here it shows you the available firmware versions that are currently available on our server. Of course, currently this is still older because we are still ahead of the release. So once we release the board and we deployed future firmware updates, you will find more recent versions here to download. So that's about the firmware update feature for the moment. Let's first open the sound fonts folder. Now you see basically all the different sound fonts that I have here. Here's also like in brackets, given the information which of the sound fonts is currently active. That means which one will be used when you now reboot the board. Then you have a nice feature, which is add sound font. So you can basically just click on this button here, and then it will open just a normal Windows or Mac file explorer window where you can select a zip file, and then it will upload it to the board. And interestingly, we even integrated a renaming feature here. That means when you upload or when you select a zip file here, the web app will automatically rename the sound files according to the GHv4 naming scheme. So you don't need to worry at all about any renaming of the files.
Oh, wow, that's a great feature.
So then let's go to the effect fonts folder. Again, we have here, like in brackets, displayed which one of those is active currently. In this case, NeoPixel Extended. Here we see the different blade styles that are on the board, or on the SD card, to be more precise. And we can, of course, add new blade styles, but what will be most interesting for most people is probably that we have an online effect library, which is exactly the same library, so it is coupled to the library in our Sabertech configurator Unity app for the GHv3. So there are a few people already actively working on uploading their own blade styles using the Sabertech configurator. And everything that has been uploaded there is also accessible here. So let's just click on it. So this is basically now these are all the different blade styles that are uploaded to our server. And you see here a few examples. Someone uploaded blade 55, for example, with blue basic. You can select it. then it shows here it has 32 color profiles, 28 on top effects. And if you want to download this, just click on the button here. And then you see download progress ongoing, and this is already finished. So it's super quick as well. And there it is. It automatically labeled it correctly as plate 49 and takes the name, Wolf Blue Basic. We can open it and see all the content inside that has been downloaded from our server. But of course, we can also clean up again. Let's just delete this for the moment. And it's gone. Okay, let me also give another example. Let's just open plate 2, for example. Here you see now the different color profiles, the background file, etc. And very often people just want to tweak the colors of the respective color profiles. And this is now also super easy by just clicking on the color profiles button here. Oh, it's loading now. Okay, now these are all the colors that are assigned to the color profile 1. Basic color is the red one. Now we can switch to color 9, for example. It updates. Yeah, we see this. I don't know how I would call this, Arctic blue, maybe. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And for any color, you can basically click on the color box, and then a color picker will open. And there you can basically select a new color, and this will be saved on the SD card after you click here on Save. So let's close this for the moment. I'm not sure if I missed anything, but I think not. So these are the most important features of the Golden Harvest Commander. Of course, when we are done with it, sorry, I forgot something. Of course, we have here the remote control features. Yeah? We can do like similar remote controls as for the Bluetooth feature. We can ignite the saber, we can start a music track, etc. Let me just display one as an example. Yeah, you can hear it probably. So this was the ignition step. So the latency is almost non-existent. I click on it and you immediately hear the sound. I can start a track, stop a track, of course, volume control, etc. So I think we don't need to go into too much detail here. I just wanted to say, if you now want to close the Wi-Fi connection, you can either hit the power button or just click here on the disconnect button. And now you can probably hear it. I'll hold it close to the microphone.
Wi-Fi deactivated.
Yeah, so it says Wi-Fi deactivated and then reboots the board. And yeah, I think now I stopped sharing, right? I did so, I think. So this is the most important stuff for the Wi-Fi connectivity. One point I forgot to mention, of course, the blue light, the onboard LED, also indicates an active Wi-Fi connection. In this case, it simply pulses slower than for the Bluetooth case to differentiate between these two connectivity features.
Okay.
So I think we are close to the end, but there are still a few things that I would like to introduce. For instance, the enhanced Saber editor. So part of it you already witnessed because I used the Saber editor to trigger on the fly the Wi-Fi connection and the Bluetooth connection. But there's one particular additional added mode in the Saber editor. And let me just briefly introduce this.
Saber editor. Select color pixel retract panel gesture Wi-Fi Bluetooth tilt calibration.
You just heard it, hilt calibration. This is a feature which is particularly useful for curved hills because you can calibrate the motion sensor with respect to the actual orientation and position of the board inside the hilt. Because, I mean, for curved hilt, it can often happen that the board is not perfectly aligned with the actual blade, which makes it more difficult to trigger some gestures, for example. And by performing a hilt calibration, you can basically counteract this effect and make the gesture recognition also smoothly and reliable in this case. Let's just trigger a hilt calibration.
When you
So
Press the power button when you are ready.
I hope you could hear it. So basically ask me just to point the saber downwards.
Now hold your saber out in front of you so that the blade extends horizontally. Press the power button when you are ready.
And now I'm supposed to hold it horizontal.
Hilt calibrated. Back in Saber Editor. Select mode.
And that's it.
Effect, save, and
And now the hilt has been calibrated, and the calibration matrix is actually stored in the override general text file.
So for that sort of situation, if that was the case, because I got a curved hilt right here. So if the board is on an angle, but you've changed it so the blade is horizontal, so that configuration, if that board is on an angle, will now be considered aligned with the blade.
Yeah, it will be
So if
projected.
the board's down here at an angle, if the board's is in line with the blade or offset from the blade, it'll consider it in line with the blade.
Yeah. So basically,
right?
so when
Okay.
in the hilt calibration mode and it says hold the saber like down, exactly down, straight down, just hold it what intuitively for you means holding it down, and then the board will
So the blade
recognize
turns.
this position, yeah, as down.
That makes sense because
And then horizontal. Okay. That's awesome. Because
Yeah.
then you're not having to worry about the stab feature, but if your
Exactly.
blade's like this, you're not stabbing downwards.
Exactly. That's the point. So indeed, the step motion was one of the key motivations to introduce this hilt calibration mode. Yeah.
That is really cool.
So I would say maybe let's talk a bit about SD cards.
Yeah.
So maybe as a just for the people out there who are interested in technical details. So we are basically using now a new communication protocol, a new interface for addressing or communicating with the SD card. So previously on the GHv3, it was like something that is called SPI, which is still commonly used in the microcontroller community, but has the problem that even though SD cards officially support SPI, they are not necessarily optimized to work with it in SPI, but they are using the more up-to-date interface called SDIO. And this is exactly what we are using on the GHv4 now. And the speed up that you get for a file transfer from or to the SD card is actually insane because it's an order of magnitude. So it can reach in peaks up to 10 times higher speed, which is super insane, actually. I was totally surprised when I actually saw the statistics, when I actually checked it out, and I could get really large data transfer rates out of this thing. And an important point here is that this also improves the resilience or robustness against low quality SD cards. So it's still recommended to use our like the official SD card, like the Kingston Canvas Select Plus, which is also with the new protocol, according to our benchmarks, by far the best performing SD card. But this now makes it more robust against like possible degradations of the SD card over time, because of course SD cards wear out over time. So it should be more robust now, just because it also uses the officially recommended protocol. Then there is actually, I think I have to take a power plug soon, but currently it's still going well. I think I have something like 15% left. But let me just finish the SD card thing, and then I'll go and get the power plug. So one small feature, but I like it totally much, is that you now get an audio hint when the SD card is not inserted. So let me just take out the SD card in mine. Now I get the battery out. And now I insert the battery with the SD card not being inserted.
no SD card detected.
And the voice says that there's no SD card. Of course, you still get the flashing of the onboard LED, as well as of all the accent LEDs, similar to the GHv3. And as soon as you insert now the SD card again, the board will automatically detect that you inserted an SD card actually and will reboot it. And then you can continue using it. So basically, we stored this small sound file on the internal memory of the microcontroller so that we can play it even if there's no SD card present, which usually stores the audio files.
But that can also indicate if you have an SD card in there and you're getting that sound, there might be an issue with the SD card or something like that.
Yeah.
Because it's not detecting it.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. That is, I think, super important and will simplify troubleshooting a lot. So I would say what I could also show now, because I think this is also a very important achievement or a step forward when it comes to the technology, is that the bootloader that is used to install the firmware updates has been significantly redesigned and improved, in the sense that previously on the GHv3, when it happened that you had a power loss while you were performing the firmware update, or something else happened, like a cable got loose, for example, then the firmware got basically corrupted because, of course, the microcontroller doesn't know what to do with like a half-installed firmware. So it will just become unresponsive. There are tweaks to restore it, but it's not that obvious for users how to do it. And usually the way to solve this would be to contact me and ask how it can be restored. Of course, we wanted to fix this with the GHv4, and we managed to implement a solution that works as follows. So whenever you're installing now a firmware update and you have a power loss, for example, of course, this installation process will be interrupted, but the next time you boot the board again, it will still work because it will simply load the firmware version that was the last one that is working. So it will ignore the half-installed firmware and instead use a backup firmware. So this will make it totally safe.
I feel like a lot of the issues we had with the tech support in the group with the GH3, of course, initially was people having issues with a corrupt firmware. And
yeah,
not which version they had, which the other feature you mentioned was brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was constantly trying to figure out which version is on here. What is it? A version 3.3, 3.2? And when are we booting up to 3.3? Do I have to go back to 3.2 to redo it, or that sort of thing?
Yeah, definitely. So that will be a big help indeed. Also, the firmware files themselves, I'm just not sure if I mentioned it earlier, the firmware update files themselves that you load on the SD card to install a firmware update contain also the version number now. So the text file shows you what is currently installed, and the update file itself tells you which version is going to be installed when you boot it next time.
Perfect.
And there's one last feature related to firmware updates that I would like to present. Let me just briefly set it up. Give me like 20 to 30 seconds. Because what I'm going to do now is I put an update file on my SD card. And then I demonstrate how the board actually indicates the progress of the firmware update via the onboard LED and the exit LEDs that are connected.
This is the thing I'm for.
So let me just find the latest firmware update file. And put it on the SD card. So I have it now.
Performing firmware update.
This sounds familiar. It's the same sound that indicates the start and the completion. And what we see now here is the LED is pulsing.
No SD
Oh,
card
sorry.
detected.
Took the wrong one.
Performing firmware update.
Now you see the pulsing of the onboard LED and of the accent LED here. And it goes faster and faster the nearer you get to completion.
You can see it.
That's pretty cool.
Completed.
And now it's completed. Yeah.
That was something that I know a lot of the users had issues with too, is that if there was a hiccup with the update, they weren't sure, like, is the Saber bricked or am I good?
Exactly.
Kind of feedback, like live, real time.
Yeah. So that's
Well,
that would be huge as well.
And that's a huge thing, especially when people are just updating their thing, and all of a sudden you get, like you said, you get the halfway done.
Yeah.
They feel like they break the board, and a lot of the people are not.
Exactly.
They're it's very user friendly, because it's basically saying, oh, even though the firmware didn't update, your Saber will still work in the old mode, and then we'll just try again with the firmware update again.
Yeah. Yeah. So as a last point, I would like to show off some alternative user interface sounds. But before I do this, I really would like to get my power plug. So give me 20 seconds and I'll be back.
Getting a power block. But yeah.
So okay, we have power. So that was probably
not going to run
now. Okay. Yes, what did I want to do? Yes, I wanted to make also a shout out to Brian Connor, who just started to port his GHv3 user interface sounds to the GHv4. And I would like to show off one of them, which he just sent me today for showing off in this live stream. Let me see if I have the correct SD card now loaded. Let's hope. This should be an Anakin user interface sounds.
Saber editor.
It is.
Select mode. Color profile. Pixel number. Ignition type. Retraction type. Ignition speed. Retraction speed. Battle configuration. Gesture controls. Wi-Fi setup. Bluetooth setup. Hilt calibration. Effect font slot. Save and leave Saber editor.
Okay, that is cool.
I'm looking forward very much to the other packages that he's preparing. Also, make sure to drop him a donation, even if it's a small one, because he's putting a lot of work into these. And they are also all available for free.
I need the James Arnold Taylor. I need his user interface sounds for my Mark I.
Yeah.
Anyhow, proceed.
So yeah, I think at least according to the notes that I prepared, we're through. I mean, there are additional features, additional information, which will be then unveiled in the official release post, or maybe even in separate posts over the next days. Let's see. But for the moment, I think we dropped quite a lot of information already.
Well, we need to leave a little room for discussion as well, too, right? So
exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely it's basically the same easy install, the same easy interface that you had from your Golden Harvest version 3. Like all the features that we loved about it, with some very nice updated features and more robust of a board to give us a lot more power going forward.
Definitely, yeah. Also, again, I have to point out, given that we have so much memory available now, it will be a lot of fun to release very frequent firmware updates, because there are a lot of ideas that I couldn't realize on the GHv3 anymore due to the restricted memory space. And these are all going to be realized now.
Cough, cough, OLED support. I hate
Yeah.
OLED, but I know someone's going to ask, where are we at?
Actually, the wiring diagram creator showed already the OLED connection.
Yep.
There's a few people that want to hear that.
Yes.
Okay.
More information on that will be coming next days. Yeah.
So, is that it?
Yeah, I think that's it.
That's everything you wanted to get out there? Okay, well, as everyone knows, Frederick's always available, actually very responsive given the time zone difference. Because Jeremy's
Mhm.
half hour behind, I think Frederick's.
I'm actually 2 hours 2 hours ahead of you. So I'm at what, 11 o'clock or something like that right now.
Or I meant earlier, but anyhow.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have, there's a lot of people in the group. Everyone's ready to help. So, you got any questions on the features or anything like that? There's Frederick, myself, Jeremy, Johnny Pilato is fully aware of the specs, and Tom Brumleaf, well, like everyone on the staff, a couple of other people. So yeah, look forward to seeing some questions and seeing some interest. Thanks, Frederick.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. And thanks to all the beta testers. There will be like a bigger shout out in the release post, of course. But yeah, just wanted to drop this here as well.
Yeah, with a lot of back and forth and fixing things were going on through that process, which was really cool.
Yeah.
So.
Alrighty. Well, gentlemen, everybody have a good afternoon, or in Frederick's case,
Evening, yes.
Good evening.
Okay, see you guys.
have a good day.
Bye, guys.